Greetings, teachers, and especially co-teachers for this tutorial. I am Dr. Rachel Meixner, and today I'm going to walk you through how you can take complex directions and support students with learning needs by breaking them down into specific steps and creating graphic organizers, depending on the student's needs. So here I have the directions for writing a formal lab report in a science class. And as you can see, it's basically in article form. So this is some great rigorous reading. Students have to read these very detailed directions and interpret how to compose their high-level lab report. This would probably be later high school. And it's wonderful to prepare students for whatever comes next at the post-secondary level. However, students with reading difficulties, students with attention span and academic stamina difficulties might really shut down if they were just given these directions and told, hey, write a lab report based on what this says, right? So, as a special educator in a general education class, which I have been many times, I would take these directions, and my first step is to quickly copy them. So I'm highlighting. I can do Control C to copy, or of course edit copy. Totally depends on your style. Then I'm going to go to Magic School AI. So Magic School is made for teachers and thoroughly researched to meet the needs of teachers. However, it can be really overwhelming because there are so many tools, and it can be hard to sift through and find out, okay, what tool do I actually want to use and which ones actually help my practice. So today, after exploring Magic School for such a huge part of my life, I know that they have something called the assignment scaffolder. Now you're probably asking, how do I get there? Well, I could scroll through these many choices. I could go to Discover All Tools, but the easiest way is if you go to All Tools, it will pull up a search bar for you, and I'm going to write in Assignment Scaffolder. Here it is. So I click on Assignment Scaffolder. Now, I need to know the level of my students, and for those that I'm trying to accommodate, I want to make sure that I choose a level that's challenging for them without overwhelming them and frustrating them. This goes way back to probably your earliest educational psychology classes, Jean Piaget talking about the zone of proximal development. So human beings learn when something is challenging but not too challenging. So let's imagine that in this senior class, I have a group of students functioning pretty much at the 9th grade level. So I'm going to choose 9th grade, even though it's not their chronological age, because that is what the AI tool will offer me. Then I'm going to click under Assignment Prompt and simply paste in those very detailed directions, basically the article. And when I hit Generate, Magic School is going to break down those very detailed directions into steps for the student. And if they follow the steps very carefully and clearly, they will produce exactly what the teacher is looking for when they passed out those articles with the detailed lab report directions. So if we look at the top, it breaks it down as specifically as, okay, add a title, your name, the date, your class and teacher if required. These are kind of the unwritten procedures that we expect all students to know, but a lot of times my students who are already battling through the barriers of their disabilities to get through the day, they will forget these details and then they will not get credit for their work, right? Then it even tells them, okay, read the experiment, in one sentence state the purpose. It gives them a sentence frame to write their hypothesis, so they're not just pulling it out of thin air. What I love about this is, usually half the battle for my students is just getting started. If I just say write something based on these directions, they don't know where to go. What I could do is I could pull a small group and walk them through these directions step by step, or I could offer these to students in the form of a checklist. So I could say, as you go through, cross out each item as you do it. I also love it because it will give a final checklist, usually in the assignment scaffolder, and it will also give vocabulary. So these are the words I might pull out to pre-teach maybe to a few students. These are words that we could be sure to emphasize for the entire class because it never hurts to explicitly teach vocabulary for all students. And this might be enough. This might be what my students need. Now, if I have students who are really struggling linguistically, if they have expressive and receptive language disabilities, if their literacy is just really low, which happens, I still want them to be able to successfully write the lab report and get a good grade and graduate, right? So what I'm going to do is take it even further. I'm going to copy the pieces that I need. I do not need the teacher tip or answer key notes. These are just little add-ons that Magic School did. I don't necessarily need the vocabulary, but it doesn't hurt to copy it. So I'm going to start here and highlight pretty much everything except for those last little points. I'm going to do a Control-C to copy. Note that on Magic School, if I did just want to copy the whole thing, I could also use this icon where it says copy message. It's this little square. And that looks the same on most chatbots. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over to Canva. Canva is wonderful and it's excellent for design. So, even before they had an AI component, you could design beautiful presentations, flyers, class newsletters, things like that. But what I'm going to use it for today is to create a graphic organizer. So for my students that are really impacted by language difficulties, this could also be for included students that are learning English in the class. Graphic organizers are a lifesaver because it creates structure and it helps them kind of form, how can I organize all of this information into buckets so that I can manage and conceptualize what I'm learning. So Canva is fantastic for making graphic organizers out of anything. I'm going to go over and click on these three dots over on the side menu. If you go to Canva AI, click here. This is the first time that we need to type our own prompt, right? Up until now, we've been copying and pasting. Now, whenever you prompt a chatbot, you are only as good as your prompt. So you need to be really specific about what you want. So I'm going to say, create a graphic organizer based on these step-by-step directions, helping students write a scientific lab report. And then I'm going to add 9th grade level just to give it all the information that I want it to be capturing. So the components I have here is I want a graphic organizer, I want step-by-step, I want it to cover all of the steps in the directions. I note that it's for students, so this will be a student-friendly resource, not teacher. And then scientific lab report. So I've kind of captured the gist of what I want, and then specifying 9th grade level will help it decide the rigor of the language. Now I simply need to paste what I copied from Magic School. So this is my step-by-step. And when I hit submit, I will see what Canva produces for me. While it's working, I will tell you that Canva that I'm showing you today is the free level. So I could upgrade and get the premium level, but most of the time it produces what I need at the free level. I also use Magic School at the free level, although I will say Magic School has a lot more capacity if you do pay for the membership. And by the way, this is not sponsored. So if you look at Canva, here's what it produced. One option is to create a storyboard. This is probably what I want because it shows the lab report in a step-by-step storyboard that students can fill in. It's cool though because Canva will also create learning activities. So let's say I just want students to learn what a lab report is. This isn't going to be a summative lab report. I just am teaching them this is what a good lab report includes. This will have a place where they can organize and research what lab reports are. And then this is a sorting challenge. So what it gives you here is it will have you matching vocabulary, like what is a hypothesis, what is a random error, what is a variable, those kinds of things. But for today, I'm going to take Canva up on the offer to have a step-by-step storyboard. So what I'm going to do is check the box, this is the one that I want, and hit generate. Now as it is working, I just need to be patient because if you're anything like me, I would accidentally close the tab and go on to something else in my overloaded multitasking brain, and then I would have to go back to Canva and possibly start over. So we don't want that. This is a good moment to sip your coffee and relax. And here we go. So it'll pop up right here. It had a little fireworks celebration when your activity is generated. Now this screen is Canva AI. So this is where you're creating materials. Once you click open, you're opening something called the Canva editor. So once you open it, you are in a screen that looks like this. This is Canva editor. So now it's given you this beautiful lab report in a graphic organizer form, but you are able to edit everything here. So when you scroll over it and you see it highlight, you can double click and edit what it says. Now you're probably thinking that is way too tiny. I do not have the eyesight for that. This slider at the bottom allows you to zoom in, which is a lifesaver for me, that's for sure, even with my glasses on. So now that we're zoomed in, I can look at each box and make sure it covers all the pieces of the lab report. What I would do is, this is giving another prompt of like what you should be showing in this part, but I would actually take these out because based on this information, the prompt in the square, it will tell students what they need to enter. So once I've cleaned all of those out, I am ready to share this with my students. Now there's a few options for sharing. Oh, now I zoomed out a little too far. There we go. I could print this and have students write their notes on what would go into each section using paper and pencil. That's often my preferred method, only because the research says more areas of the brain fire when students are actually writing with their hand. But it depends on the student, right? Some are much better with a screen in front of them and with typing, depending on their, fine motor skills. So if I want to share this through an LMS, a learning management system like Google Classroom or Schoology or whatever your school uses, Canvas, I would simply click on Share and copy link. Will give me the link to this living in Canva, and the student would be able to edit it. It actually comes in the form of a Google Drive link. However, before I can share it, I need to change it from only I can access to anyone with the link can edit. Now I can copy the link, and when I paste it into the assignment in Google Docs or in Google Classroom or whatever learning management system you use, I can just check the students who I want to assign this, and they will get their own copy to edit. So that is how you can push it out to your students. Now the final decision, and this might be a conversation between the general ed teacher and the special education teacher, is what are we going to require as the final product? So for some students, if they can fill out this graphic organizer in great detail, that might be appropriate if they have a modified curriculum, modified assessments, because they're still demonstrating the learning target that they can write the content of a lab report, right? You're not necessarily assessing their writing ability. For some students, though, that might not be appropriate. So this might become the pre-writing form, and then they would be expected to take the notes that they write in each area and write them up as sentences as a formal lab report. So it completely depends on the student and your professional decisions based on what is rigorous. That is why we call it an individual education plan, right? But having the opportunity to differentiate we can take the directions from this, very heavy, very overwhelming, to this. Maybe this is all the student needs, right? The step by step and the vocabulary words. And then some of our learners might need the graphic organizer level. So this is what differentiation is all about. This is scaffolding, right? We're giving each learner what they need to be challenged without shutting out students who have disabilities. So thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate it. I hope this helps your students and your practice.